you have the example of killing. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you were to observe a killing or hear about it or something along those
Yeah.
lines, what what would you feel? All right, we will bring up Jess.
Howdy, howdy. Can y'all hear me?
Hey, Jess.
Yeah, can hear you.
Okay,
Rabbit
perfect.
clown. That's
Nice.
Awesome. All right, so what's it called? Gosh, my brain not working super well right now. Oh yeah, are y'all familiar with healthygamer.gg?
Yeah, the doc. I love listening to him talk to people.
Ooh,
Yeah, for sure. I guess like the conversation earlier with semantics reminded me a lot of
Gotta check it out.
it's of course like a different flavor, right?
Yeah,
But it reminded me a lot of his conversation with Sneeko.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh,
yeah, and
Now
that
that you
was
mention it, yeah,
yeah, it's just super funny because like with these kinds of conversations, there's like a mutual sort of contract of trust, right? And that was obviously not entirely there. It was pretty
yeah.
funny.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
kind of enjoy it, honestly. Like
yeah, for
if
sure.
that's what he feels is what he cares about. That's
Yeah,
well, it's what he cares enough to troll about it. So it's to me, it's like a puzzle. It's like it's another aspect of human interaction that I just like to figure out.
absolutely. Yeah,
you're a better man than me.
yeah, but I guess like uh, what's it called? I wanted to talk about street epistemology in general, but I think just for the sake of time, I'm gonna try and answer the question of what do you wish others believe also. So I guess what I would do with that is just say that like there's a specific flavor or combination, right, of kindness and assertiveness that just generally makes the world a better place. And generally, any sort of malice, anger, and stuff like that is pretty, um, like unprocessed emotions generally are pretty misplaced. I guess this is like a pretty undeveloped thesis, just to say the least. But I just generally think that what's it called? That being a patient, being like a patient person, and being kind to people and giving people the benefit of the doubt, unless they give you a reason not to, is generally a good thing. Yeah, but honestly, this is like I'm worried I'm like saying like a cliche or something. I have no idea what I'm saying, to be honest.
I get it. I
Could
get it.
it could be a cliche. I think I agree with you. Um, but I
Yeah,
think we can still, even though I agree with you, let's go down this path together. Let's uh
yeah, sure.
let's figure it out.
Also, I don't know
Okay.
if I agree with you.
Hmm. All right, we got three people. We got two that agree, one that is unsure. Okay. So Jess, we got this like being a patient person, being kind is generally good. I think you were saying, and
Yeah,
walk me down this path.
unfortunately.
How did you arrive at this conclusion?
Unfortunately, it's through a lot of anecdotal stuff. It's like very heavily anecdotal and theoretical versus like empirical.
Hmm.
But I've sort of gotten to a position where I've sort of, uh, I really hate Kant, like as a philosopher for a lot of different stuff. But a few things that I sometimes exercise is the idea that if everybody acted in a certain way, right, at least for certain stuff, right, like the whole world would be a better place. And so, as consequence, that influences some of the actions I take because I sort of think, if anybody takes inspiration from what I do, right, they're going to act better themselves, possibly, and transfer that onto somebody else. And I think like the same for negative stuff that I do because of like I see different stuff like for example cycles of violence and trauma, and I see that actions have a ripple effect, right? And so I try to make whatever I put out there be the best I can be to a certain extent. Like there's definitely times where I lose my cool or I don't actively think about what I'm doing, but at least recently, especially, I've been trying to be deliberately patient and kind when I can, even when it's just like some random person.
Okay. What's so we have like this people can draw like this inspiration and to do kind of mimic what you're doing or do these other good things. What's underlying these good things? Why is it important to do good things?
I mean, I guess this is getting into my sort of whole ethical framework, which is complex but very simple simultaneously. So I'm kind of a moral anti-realist, I think. I think that's what it means. I'm using the correct terminology, but basically for morals, I'm like, this is moral because I said so, and there's nothing else that I can basically say, right? There's nothing written in the stars that says that killing is good or killing is bad. And even the word killing, like what it means is like dependent on culture to culture, person to person. This is just like me vaguely trying to describe my own value judgments, right, in my own head.
Okay. Let's break it down a little further. So you have the example of killing. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you were to observe a killing or hear about it or something along those lines,
Yeah.
what what would you feel?
Um, I don't know. It really depends because like most of the time when I see stuff like, when I see people die at the hands of another person, I see a lot of negative consequences and just people get angry and it's like people use it as like excuses for martyrdom and stuff like that. But then there's one outlier that I've seen, which is the what me and my friends called the doohickey incident with Shinzo Abe. Um, and what happened with that thing is after Shinzo Abe was killed, uh, there was a substantial shift by the Japanese government to reduce the power by the Moonies, which is a cult group. And they previously had a lot of negative consequences that I would argue, at least negative consequences on the system, right? But there have been arguments that I've seen that assassination led to positive consequences in terms of the disempowerment of the Moonies. But I don't really know whether that's like a consistent thing that people could do where I'm like, oh, like if only we had doohickeys in the right place, so this would like solve all our problems. But I just generally think that like taking someone's life is a thing that should be avoided at all costs. And I never think, like in terms of how I think of it, like the phrases that I say in my head, I don't think people deserve to die, right? I think if this person dropped dead right now, like the world would be a lot better place. But I don't necessarily even want them to suffer. I don't want their family to suffer. I don't want all this different stuff to happen.
Gotcha. So I think what I'm hearing is like there's exceptions, like there's might be some utility to unaliving someone,
Yeah,
and
or war on
yeah.
occasion.
Okay, gotcha. Let's go to like the simplest example. Someone's walking down the street, just punches them in the face, and it's fatal. So, what's your emotion regarding that?
My emotion?
Hmm.
I would just feel kind of I wouldn't say like even sad. I would say like what's it called? It would just be like I don't know, like the motivations of the guy are like not even clear, right?
Yeah, no context.
No context. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of violence. I would probably be jarred because I would be seeing this, right? This would be live footage or me personally seeing it. So I'd be jarred by that. Seeing a dead body, seeing a person witness that and do that, that would be a really profound experience that I don't know if I would want to experience myself.
Gotcha. And what do you think is underlying this feeling? Why are you feeling the way you feel?
Um, I think that I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. I guess like my structure of my responses to things, I think, are purely dictated by, as far as I know, right, the material world and the material conditions within my brain, right? A combination of the interplay between my body and my brain in terms of memories, which take the physical form of patterns in like the different tissues, right? lightning that is the electricity between my different neurons, and this programming and genetics that's come through. That's what I think causes it. But at the same time, that doesn't have a lot of explanatory power in terms of like a specific like why, right?
Yeah.
It only gives like a vague direction of where I think it comes from, but it doesn't have like a very good explanation of what's going on. And I think that's because as we investigate neurology and stuff more, we're gonna figure out what's going on, whether that's like in the brain or something deeper.
I wonder if there's, excuse me, voice is going weird. I wonder if there's something above that level, like, like maybe I can. You mind if I share what's alive in me right now? Is that okay, Jess?
Yeah, sure. That's
Okay.
really chill.
If I were to witness somebody being unalived, I think I'd have similar feelings to you. I think I'd probably be in shock, uh, depressed, maybe saddened, whatever. And I think the reason I would feel that is because I want fairness, right? I want fairness, and I want maybe justice, maybe like if the person got away, right? Um, is there something along those lines for an underlying reason to your feelings?
Oh, like fundamental values?
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, I'm in terms of stuff that I would point to, I would point to like specific values that would be a little bit different, but at the same time, what's it called? Yeah, I guess what I care about is well-being and like well-being. Yeah, I guess well-being is like the fundamental thing, right, that I care about.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But except that well-being is very vaguely defined, I just generally think it's like, how do I put it? Sort of not joy, right? Not happiness, but this specific kind of stability where people like have a reason to live and keep on living.
Almost like
Um,
safety in a way, right?
it's a kind of safety, but it's
Yeah.
specifically a combination of physical outside stuff and also in the head, right? There's mental well-being and physical well-being, right? For example, you can have an enlightened monk that's being hit from all sides and he doesn't care, right? To a certain degree, which is an example of a certain type of mental well-being in a sense, right? But physical well-being, not so great. I mean, you could also argue that the mental well-being is like a person who has like mental well-being would fight back or something like that, but that's still like a subjective opinion. It's still really up in the air. It's kind of like utility. It's not very easy to measure.
Gotcha. Okay, I think we're on the same page here. I think we're pretty much identical. So I think the way I would word it is we have empathy for well-being, or we can kind of phrase that as like safety for physical uh, safety of a person, or maybe mentally. And
Yeah.
I think that's really for me anyways, and maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. You can tell me if it is, but that's really what's supporting the claim that being a patient person, and kindness, is a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's the reason why I care about those specific attributes being present among as many human beings as possible, is specifically because of the preservation of well-being for as many people as possible. And I guess like when we get into like niche utilitarian examples of like, well, what if the few suffer so the many can survive? And like the thing about that situation with like I remember there's a specific example of a story where they would like torture this baby, right? And that like ensured that everybody else would have a great life. But in reality, the way I see it is that people's lives are ultimately, how do I put this? Like they find out, right, eventually about this instability, this flaw in the system where people get hurt, and we have the impulse to help other people to resolve these conflicts in the system. And it creates inherent instability that leads to the downfall of society, right? At least that's what I think, right? This is like a heavy anecdotal theoretical thing. But in my opinion, I think we should get to a place where like everyone in society can be confident that they're not the next person to be like, you know, arbitrarily taken in to serve this like terrible subset of society, right, in order to better, you know, everyone else. Like it's like the brutal like collective utilitarianism kind of society, right? Everyone's like, oh, like stuff is safe to a certain degree, but what if I'm the next person on the chopping block? And that stress goes through the whole population, and you know, eventually that could lead to, you know, a change in the guard, right? And I don't think that, like, if people know about it, if people end up knowing about it, even if it's hidden, people can end up knowing. But that stress, right, that insecurity, that interferes with well-being. So I think it's important to create a society where, you know, people don't feel like they're next up on the chopping block. And that's not really a possibility unless they choose to be in like service of everybody else.
I volunteer as tribute.
So true.
I got a question for you. Imagine there's a trolley.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two tracks. Now you've heard this a million times. The trolley.
I mean, I have, but if you want me to answer it, I will.
I think you already did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, in a sense, right, with that trolley problem, I would still support turning the lever, right?
Action over non-action?
Yeah, action over non-action, for sure. Because it's kind of like having, yeah. It's just like, either way, I mean, the way I think about it is actually at a visceral level to a certain degree, right? Like, either way, you're going to be traumatized. You're going to be seeing the bodies of people dying, right? There are going to be people, granted, who are going to be run over. And, like, I guess for me, personally, right, I know that I would feel less guilty if I pulled the lever.
Did you try to make a decision to do something, even if it turned out to add up wrong? Yeah.
I would feel guilty either way. I would like my whole life be like, I should have, could have, would have. If that would end up happening, it would happen either way. So rather try something. But hopefully I would be able to get into a headspace where I would be able to understand that regardless of whether I made a mistake, I should still move on with my life.
Have you always had these beliefs? What kind of led you to start building a worldview like this?
I guess there's a lot of factors that came into play, I guess. At first, I was really not thinking things through at all. I used to think that the world was like completely justified and that suffering and punishment basically existed just because, in a sense. Not that they were like unjustified, but that they were justified in and of themselves, right? That suffering happened to bad people, and because good people did bad things or something, and that's why good people suffer. And all this different stuff happened. But now I started sort of evolving and thinking about, you know, I care about the people in my life. I care about more than just the people in my life. Like, what do I want to do about it? And so over time, I got interested in different stuff around social movements, philosophy. And that's kind of where I am now as a consequence of all that. I can't gesture to specific events or different points in the evolution of my morality. Mm-hmm. Although I will say that at one point, I was like a purist in a specific way, or like a moral purist in a specific way. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but I was like, you know, if you take part in something bad, no matter whether that's a choice between two evils, that makes you a bad person, right? If you take action, right, in a situation where both things are bad, that makes you a bad person. You have to refuse. You have to not be part of that situation. And I guess that sort of changed over time because I thought about things like voting, right? I thought like both candidates were really terrible in a lot of ways because of the way the United States
I opened up a can of worms. Yes, there's so many things I want to hear from you.
yeah.
Let's chat sometime. You can help 2-Day David build a world from scratch, and we can kind of figure out how we get from point A to point B on that. Because I mean, I like the idealism. I'd be curious to see if I had more time to ask you some more questions of what about this, what about that. But we're running out of time on the show, and I do want to get to our last caller here. And so, thank you so much for coming up. And if you haven't watched the show The Good Place, I think you'd really like it if you haven't watched it.
Oh, yeah, I'll check it out. I've already seen part of it, but I think I need to see the second season. It's pretty hilarious.
It's worth it. It's actually
absolutely.
It ends well. Anyways,
Before I kick you off stage, just one last question. What did you think of the conversation?
I guess I thought of the conversation is yes, the questions that you think of, which I liked, but I felt like it was generally I feel like there could have been, I don't know, I feel like there could have been a certain amount of pushback that I would have enjoyed more, but this is just because I hang out on this server way too much, so I'm used to a lot of adversity from other people. But yeah, I enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad I thought through what I was thinking about and the connections to different part of my morality. And yeah, I hope y'all have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.